Hello, my dears. In this video, I'm going to answer October, November 2020, paper 1 and paper 2, variant 1 and 2 and 3 for core and extended. Let's start. Number 1, hedgehogs are mammals. Touching hedgehog causes it to roll into a ball to protect itself. Which characteristics is it displaying? Separation and movement, growth and sensitivity, movement and growth, movement and sensitivity. Let's see the question. Here touching a hedgehog. That means this stimuli, external stimuli. And it detects and responds to this stimuli by rolling into a ball. So which characteristics here? The first characteristic, sensitivity, then movement. So the correct answer, D, movement and sensitivity. Movement causes an organism to change its position or place, and sensitivity, being able to detect and respond to internal and external stimuli. According to the binomial system, how should a human be named? Remember that the name of species is both names. For example, Homo sapiens. The genus name starts with an uppercase letter. The trivial name with the lowercase letter, and all in italics, like this. If a name has been used once, then the genus name can be shortened like this, H. sapiens. So the correct answer, B. The diagram shows an arthropod. Which group does this arthropod belong to? Arachnid, crustacean, insect, mariable. Let's see letter A. Arachnid body divided into two parts. Here, many segments along the body. And also arachnid 4 pairs legs. But here 2 pairs of legs on each body segment. And arachnid no wings, here no antennae, but here 1 pair of antennae. Let's see crustacean. Crustacean body divided into cephalothorax, head and thorax and abdomen. Head, thorax and abdomen. And 2 pairs of antennae. Here, 1 pair only. Insect body divided into 3 parts, head, thorax, and abdomen, and 3 pairs of legs, 2 pairs of wings, no wings here, and 1 pair of antennae. Okay, no problem. Let's see mariable. Long body, yes. Many segments, yes. 2 pairs of legs on each body segment, okay, and 1 pair of antennae. So the correct answer, D, mariable. Number 4, the photomicrograph show a cell from a type of aquatic plant. Let's see this diagram and label. P, nucleus, an O cell wall, an R cell membrane, and S for chloroplast. Which parts labeled on the photomicrograph indicate that this a plant cell? For plant cell, we want to know it has cell wall and chloroplast, but nucleus and cell membrane for animal cell and the plant cell. But here, chloroplast and cell wall and vacuole. So here, the correct answer D, Q for cell wall and S for chloroplast. Number 5, the diagram shows the female reproductive system. At which level of organization are the ovum and the ovary? A, cell organ, B, cell tissue, C, organ tissue, D, tissue organ. For ovum like sperm, the cell, and the ovary, organ related to female reproductive system, and the sperm related to the male reproductive system. Ovary is organ like this for female reproductive, for male reproductive system like this. So ovum is cell and the ovary is organ. Let's see the level of organization. Cell, the building blocks. Tissue, similar cells working together in the same way. Organ, groups of tissue working together. System, group of organs working together. Okay. Number 6. The cell shown in the diagram has been magnified 3,000 times. The diagram is 21 millimeter wide. What is the actual diameter of the cell? A, 21 millimeter over 3,000, 21 multiplied by 3,000, 3,000 divided by 21. Okay, let's see the law of actual size. Actual size equals image size 21 divided by magnification 3,000. So the correct answer is B. What are features of osmosis? Let's see the definition of osmosis. Osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules. So here diffusion is involved. Yes. From a region of their higher concentration to region of lower concentration through partially permeable membrane. So requires partially permeable membrane, but doesn't require cell wall, require cell membrane, not cell wall. Okay, so the correct answer A, diffusion is involved. Osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules and doesn't require cell wall, but requires a partially permeable membrane, the cell membrane. Partially permeable membrane allows small molecules such as water to pass through, but not large solute molecules. Number 8. The diagram shows apparatus which can be used to demonstrate osmosis. Let's see this diagram. This partially permeable membrane here concentrated to number 1, very concentrated sucrose solution and low water potential. But number 2, concentrated sucrose solution and also low water potential. What about osmosis? Osmosis, here high water potential. So here water move from the higher concentration of water and the low concentration of solute to the higher concentration of solute and the lower concentration of water, low water potential. From higher water potential to lower water potential. So here, what happened to the liquid level after 1 hour? What would happen to the liquid level in the glass tubes? Yes, rise. So the correct answer D. Liquid level in tube 1 rises, and liquid level in tube 2 also rise. Number 9. Which substances are made by linking together glucose molecules only? Glucose molecules only. Cellulose, glycogen, and starch, fats, no fats, no proteins, and no fats and oils. So the correct answer A, cellulose, and glycogen and starch. What about proteins? Proteins, amino acids, fats and oil, fatty acid, and glycerol. So the correct answer A. The graph shows the effect of pH on the rate of reaction of an enzyme. What does the graph show? The enzyme is destroyed at pH 9? No, because the rate is not equal 0. The enzyme work best at pH 6? No, work best at pH 7, optimum temperature, optimum pH. C, the rate of reaction halves at pH changes from pH 5 to pH 7? No, it increases. The rate of reaction is the same at pH 5 and pH 8.5. Let's see the graph. Yes, for 5, the same, 8.5. So the correct answer D. The rate of reaction is the same at pH 5 and pH 8.5. What kind of molecules is an enzyme? All enzymes have 5 important properties. They are all proteins, and each enzyme catalyzes one particular metabolic reaction. They can be used again and again. They are influenced by temperature. They are influenced by pH. So the correct answer here, what kind of molecule is an enzyme? The correct answer C, protein. Let's see number 12. The diagram shows a cell with groups of bacteria around its edge. The bacteria move to areas of high oxygen concentration. Which process in the cell causes the bacteria to form these groups? Yes, here, cell cytoplasm, here, bacteria, spiral-shaped chloroplast. Oh, so here the correct answer, photosynthesis. The process, the product is oxygen. Okay, the bacteria move to areas of high oxygen concentration. They need oxygen for respiration and produce energy. The diagram shows a section through a leaf. Which row correctly identifies tissues X and Y? X, yes, spongy layer, and Y, upper epidermis. Okay, let's see. Okay, X, spongy mesophyll, and Y, upper epidermis. So the correct answer is D. Which stage of nutrition takes place when food molecules become part of a body cell? During the passage of food along the alimentary canal, a number of different processes can be identified. Ingestion, taking of substances, food and drink into the body through the mouth. Digestion, breaking it down of large insoluble molecules into small soluble molecules so that they can pass through the gut wall into the blood. Absorption is the movement of small food molecules and ions through the wall of the intestine into the blood. Assimilation is the movement of digestive food molecules into the cells of the body where they are used, becoming part of the cells. Yo. So the correct answer, assimilation. Let's see ingestion. The passing out of food that hasn't been digested or absorbed as feces through the anus. So the correct answer, B, assimilation. But focus here for ingestion and digestion and absorption and also ingestion. What is the definition of chemical digestion? Let's compare between physical digestion and chemical digestion. Physical digestion is the physical breakdown of food particles to increase their surface area. So B isn't correct. Chemical digestion is the breakdown of large insoluble. Yes, here insoluble, not soluble, like B. Into smaller water-soluble molecules by the action of enzymes. Let's see A and B and C and D. A, large insoluble molecules, change it into smaller soluble molecules. B, large soluble molecules are changed into smaller soluble to soluble. It's not correct. Small insoluble molecules and ions are passed through the wall of the small intestine. Small soluble molecules and ions pass through the wall of small intestine. No, isn't correct. The correct answer is A. Large insoluble molecules are changed into smaller molecules by the action of enzymes. The diagram shows the human alimentary canal, where is most digested food absorbed into the blood. Absorption is the movement of digested food molecules through the wall of the intestine into the blood and lymph. The small intestine is adapted for absorption by being very long and having folded inner lining with millions of tiny villi. So the correct answer B, small intestine. Number 17. In which order does water pass through these structures in a plant? Water enters root hair cell by osmosis. It then passes across the cells of the root cortex by osmosis before passing into the xylem, and then up the stem to the leaves. Yes, so the correct answer, D, root hair, then xylem, then mesophyll of leaves. Number 18. The photomicrograph show a cross section through a plant stem. What is the name and function of the tissue labeled X? Let's see what is the name of tissue X. Tissue X, yes, xylem. What about this part? Phloem. Yes, tissue X, xylem. And the function of xylem, transport water and minerals. Okay, so the correct answer D. Xylem transport water and minerals. Let's see A phloem transport sugars. Yes, it's correct, but for phloem, the correct answer here is xylem, not phloem. Phloem transport water and minerals? No. This is for xylem. Xylem transport sugar? No, it's for phloem. So the correct answer D. Xylem transport water and minerals. The table shows some features of blood vessels, which show the features of a vein. Let's see the direction of blood flow. Blood flow away from the heart. This is for artery. And the smaller lumen and thicker wall. But what about vein? The features of a vein. Vein thinner wall and larger lumen and blood flow towards the heart. So the correct answer, C or D, for the direction of blood flow towards the heart. Let's see the size of the central hole, lumen. Yeah, it's larger. So the correct answer, D, the direction of blood flow towards heart, size of the central hole, lumen, large, and thickness of wall, thin. Focus here for features of artery. For another question. Which component of the blood release antibodies in response to an infection by bacteria. Blood plasma, platelets, red blood cells, white blood cells. Blood plasma transport ions, nutrients, carbon dioxide, and hormones. Platelets for clotting, blood clotting, red blood cells, oxygen transport. What about white blood cells? Yes, antibodies formation. So the correct answer D, which is an example of transmissible diseases. Coronary heart disease caused by eating high-fat diet, AIDS, liver disease caused by excessive alcohol consumption, and scurvy. What is the correct answer? Yes, the correct answer is okay. AIDS by sexual activity and body fluids. Pathogens are organisms that cause disease. Most of the organisms that cause disease in humans are bacteria and viruses. Other pathogens are fungi, protists, and worms. The disease that they cause are transmissible disease because the pathogens are passed or transmitted from one person to another. They are also called infectious diseases. But here caused by eating? No, it's not correct. By excessive alcohol? It's not correct. Scurvy? No. The deficiency of vitamin. Deficiency of vitamin C. But what about AIDS? Yes, for sexual activity and body fluids. The diagram shows some of the structures in a human lung. Where is the carbon dioxide concentration highest? A or B or C or D? Okay. For D, oxygen concentration is high. But the question, where is the carbon dioxide concentration highest? Yes, the correct answer B. Let's see this diagram. Yeah, pulmonary artery. Because inside the lungs, let's talk about pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary circulation. What happens here for pulmonary circulation? Transport oxygen, poor blood, from the right ventricle to the lungs. What happens here? Gas exchange. So the correct answer B is the carbon dioxide concentration high. But the oxygen concentration is high after gas exchange to pulmonary vein, then to left atrium, through pulmonary vein. 23. The list shows some processes that happen in the human body. Water enters cells by osmosis, muscles contract, impulses travel along neurons, oxygen diffuses into cells. Which of these require energy released by respiration? Okay, let's see number one. Water enters cells by osmosis, doesn't require energy. But muscles contract require energy. So two is correct. Impulses travel along the neurons also require energy. So 3 is correct. Oxygen diffuses into cells doesn't require energy. So the correct answer C, 2 and 3 only. But let's see, organisms need energy for many different things. Energy is used in humans for the following processes: muscle contraction, cell division, absorption of nutrients in the gut by active transport, sending impulses along nerves. Now for number 3, impulses travel along neurons, require energy, protein synthesis for making enzymes, some hormones and antibodies, making new cell membranes and cell structures like the nuclei during growth, keeping the body temperature constant. Some of the energy released is in the form of heat. Number 25. The amount of urea in the blood increases as it passes through organ X. What is organ X? Yes, organ X is liver. Why? Because deamination is the breakdown of excess amino acids in the liver to form ammonia, which is made into urea. Urea is made in the liver from excess amino acids. It is carried to the kidneys in the plasma, where it is filtered out and leaves the body dissolved in the form of urine. So the amount of urea in the blood increase as it passes through the organ, the liver. 25. Which is the correct sequence of structures through which a nerve impulse passes in a reflex arc like this? Okay, let's start. Start here from receptor. From receptor. Nerve impulse from pain sensor. Here, pain sensor. And then sensory neuron. And this to relay. Then to motor neuron. Then to effector. So the correct answer D, receptor, sensory neuron, relay neuron, motor neuron, then effector, like muscle. 26. The diagram show an eye. Which labeled part contains cells that are sensitive to light? Let's see A and B and C and D. A, cornea. Cornea here refracts light. But the question about sensitive to light. B, sclera. What is the function of sclera? The function of sclera is a white layer of the eye that covers most of the outside of the eye ball, provides support for the eye ball, helping it keep its shape. So it is not correct. What about C? C, optic nerve, carries nerve impulses away to the brain. So it is incorrect. D, retina. What is the function of retina? An light sensitive layer. So it is sensitive to light, which contains rod cells that work in dim light and cone cells that detect color and details. So the correct answer, D. Which hormone stimulates the development of male gametes? A, adrenaline. Adrenaline, when you are frightened or angry, adrenaline helps your body cope with an emergency. So it is not correct. Insulin. Insulin, let's see insulin. Insulin lowers the blood glucose concentration. Estrogen, estrogen is related to female. What is the correct answer? Yeah, the correct answer D, testosterone, the development of male gametes. This make here testosterone. In males, this stimulates development of secondary features during puberty. 28. A drug is defined as substance taken into the body that what? Causes addiction? No. Cures disease? No. Kills bacteria? No. In general, modify or affects chemical reaction. A drug is any substance taken into the body that modify or affect chemical reactions in the body. Number 29. What is an example of asexual reproduction? A single bacterium dividing to produce two genetically identical bacteria, mammal giving birth to 4 offspring, sexual reproduction, female bird laying 6 eggs which will hatch into the same species. No, tomato plant producing fruits which contain many seeds is bisexual reproduction. But let's see this. For binary vision in bacteria, each new bacterial cell is genetically identical to each other and to the parent cell. So the correct answer A, the example of a sexual reproduction, single bacterium dividing to produce 2 genetically identical bacteria. What is the sequence of events when a woman gives birth? Let's see the stages of birth. Number 1, amniotic sac breaks. Muscles in the uterus wall contract. Cervix dilates or gets wider. Baby passes out through the vagina. Umbilical cord is tied and cut after birth is delivered. So the correct answer, B, the first, cervix dilates or gets wider. Second, passage of fetus through vagina. Third, umbilical cord cut. So the correct answer is B. And remember the stages of birth. Some types of birth control are listed: condom, diaphragm, IUD, vasectomy. Which types are barrier methods? Let's see number 1, condom barrier, yes, so it's correct. Number 2, diaphragm barrier, yes, it's correct. IUD, it's chemical, from chemical. And the last one, vasectomy, it's surgical. So the correct answer is B, 1 and 2. In human, sex determination is controlled by the X and Y chromosomes. A man and a woman have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. What is the probability that their next child will be a girl? Yes, 50%. Let's see this. Punnett square for mother and father, XX for mother and father XY. Here XX, XX, and XY, XY. So the percentage here 50 to 50. 50% to 50%. So the correct answer B, 50%. Mitosis is a type of a cell division. Which row about mitosis is correct? For cell produced and functions. Let's see here the significance of mitosis. Mitosis produces cells that are an exact copy of the parent cell. These daughter cells have the same number of chromosomes and genetically identical, not different to the parent cell. So the correct answer, C or D. But let's complete. Mitosis is important for the following process: growth and repair and placement and asexual reproduction. So the correct answer here, the function of mitosis, growth and repair of tissues. So the correct answer is C. Genetically identical and growth and repair of tissues. 34. Which statement is best used to describe difference in height in humans? Continuous variation or discontinuous variation? Okay. Let's compare between continuous variation and discontinuous variation. The continuous variation is influenced by genes and environment, resulting in a range of phenotype like height in humans. Discontinuous variation results in a small number of phenotypes with no intermediates. It's caused by genes alone, like human blood groups, and also limited, not a range. So the correct answer for a height in humans, continuous variation, resulting in a range, not limited, like A. It's correct answer B, continuous variation, resulting in a range of phenotypes. A student who wrote some statements describing the stages involved during selective breeding of plants. Farmers select individual plants with desirable features. Farmers cross these individuals to produce the next generation. Farmers then select the offspring with the desirable features. Which statements are correct? Let's see here what happens. Human choose desirable feature of an animal or plant to improve. So number 1 is correct. Animals or plants showing these features are bred to produce the next generation. So number 2 is correct. Farmers cross these individuals to produce next generation. The offspring are checked to find those that show an improvement in the desired feature or features. These are kept for breeding the next generation. So farmers then select the offspring with the desirable features. So the correct answer A, 1, 2, and 3. Again, number 1, farmers select individual plants with desirable features. Farmers then cross these individuals to produce the next generation. Number 3, farmers then select the offspring with the desirable features. The diagram shows a food chain. Which terms can be used to describe the fox in this food chain? Let's see. Clover plant is producer, rabbit herbivore and first consumer, fox carnivore and second consumer. So the correct answer B, carnivore and secondary consumer. The diagram represents the carbon cycle. Which process produces the carbon dioxide from the factory and the car? Combustion, condensation, decomposition, precipitation. Fossil fuels like oil, fossil fuels, and coal are natural gas contain carbon dioxide, contain carbon. Carbon dioxide is one of the gases released into the air during combustion when these fuels are burned. So the correct answer, A, combustion. In the water cycle, which stage is only carried out by plants? Condensation, evaporation, precipitation, transpiration. Yes, by plant, transpiration. So the correct answer, D, transpiration. Yeast carries out anaerobic respiration, making carbon dioxide and alcohol, ethanol, as end products, which end products can be used to make biofuel and bread. Yes, for bread, carbon dioxide. Yeast carries out anaerobic respiration in the production of ethanol for biofuels. And yeast carries out anaerobic respiration during bread making. So for biofuel, ethanol, and for bread, carbon dioxide. What is the effect of replacing tropical rainforest with plantations of oil palm trees, which are grown as crop plants? What happened? Yes, this is called monoculture. The disadvantage here, destroying areas of natural vegetation between fields, reduce biodiversity of plants and animals. So the correct answer is C, reduced number of species. Which process is carried out by all organisms? Yeah, the correct answer is growth by all organisms. What about photosynthesis? Only by plants and algae. Sexual reproduction? Not all organisms. Transpiration? Not all organisms for plants. But all organisms carry growth. Carry out. Some of structures found in cells are listed: cytoplasm, cell membrane, cell wall, chloroplast. How many of these structures are found in the cells of all living organisms? Means for animal cells and plant cells. Cytoplasm, yes, and here cytoplasm and here cytoplasm. Here cell membrane and here cell membrane. But for animal cell, no cell wall. For animal cell, no chloroplast. So here, how many of these structures are found in the cells of all living organisms? Only two, cytoplasm and cell membrane. Which type of cell transport oxygen? Ciliated cells? No, ciliated cells are found in the air passage in the lungs, trachea and bronchi, and the oviducts. In the female reproductive system, the cells have cilia on their surface, cilia beat back and forth to create current in the fluid next to the cell surface. In the airway, cilia move the mucus that traps dust and pathogens up the nose and throat. In the oviducts, cilia move the egg from the ovary to the uterus. So it is not correct. Nerve or neuron are highly specialized cells. They have thin extensions of the cytoplasm like wires. They are able to transmit information in the form of electrical impulses around the body. It's not correct. But the mesophil cell are plant cells with numerous chloroplasts in the cytoplasm, trap light energy for photosynthesis. So it's not correct. It's transport oxygen. Yeah, so the correct answer D, red blood cells contain the protein called hemoglobin that carries oxygen. They are shaped like flattened discs. The shape provides large surface area compared with their volume, which makes for efficient absorption of oxygen. The graph shows how the percentage of protein found in potatoes was affected by the concentration of nitrate fertilizer added to the crop when it was growing. These results suggest that greater concentrations of nitrate fertilizer allow the potatoes to make more what? Yeah, so here, let's read this. Plant nutrients. Nutrients are needed for healthy growth of plants. They are used for variety of purposes in plant. If these nutrients are lacking in the soil, then plants do not grow well and show certain symptoms known as deficiency symptoms. Plants need nitrate ions to make amino acids, which are used to make proteins, as proteins are required for growth. Plant deficient in nitrate show poor growth. So the correct answer A, amino acids. What about magnesium? Magnesium ions are absorbed by plants and used to make chlorophyll. And leaves of plants deficient in chlorophyll look yellow, a condition known as chlorosis. Plants need phosphate for making compounds such as DNA and for respiration. If the soil doesn't contain enough nutrients, farmers and growers may add more fertilizer to replace the missing nutrients. The diagram shows the bricks used in an experiment to demonstrate two processes that take place in the body. With the dialysis tubing and tightly sealed. Test tube, pure water, dialysis tubing, which is partially permeable, like partially permeable membrane, and here mixture of saliva and starch solution. After 1 hour, the water outside the dialysis tubing contained reducing sugars, which two processes are represented by the experiment. What happened here? Yes, mixture of saliva and the starch solution. What happened? Starch molecule is made up of many glucose molecules. Amylase enzymes break down starch into maltose, this reducing sugar. So what happened here? Digestion and also absorption. What about absorption? The movement of digested food molecules through the wall of the intestine into the blood or the lymph. Digested food includes simple sugars, amino acids, fatty acids, and glycerol. These molecules pass through the wall of the small intestine either by diffusion or by active transport. Here by diffusion through what? Through partially permeable. Which type of organism causes tooth decay? We said it before. Bacterium. Yes, bacteria are present on the surface of our teeth. Food deposits and bacteria form a layer called plaque. Bacteria on the plaque feed on sugars. They use it in respiration and producing acids. So it dissolves enamel, forming a hook. What is the function of phloem? Yes, transport sugar to the roots. So, what about A? Transport minerals to the roots? Xylem. Transport starch to the roots? No. Transport water to the roots? The xylem. So the correct answer C, transport sugar to the roots. What ensures the blood flow in one direction in the human circulatory system? Yes, the valve. Valves, the heart and valves ensure a one-way flow of blood around the circulatory system. Some functions of blood are listed: antibody production, blood clotting, oxygen transport, phagocytosis. What are functions of white blood cells? White blood cells, antibody production, and phagocytosis. So the correct answer, B, 1 and 4. Antibody production, lymphocytes, And phagocytosis, phagocytes search out bacteria and take them into vacuoles where they are digested, which is an example of transmissible disease. Yes, cholera. Cholera after drinking contaminated water. Let's see this table. Yes, cholera and typhoid, contaminated food and drink. People preparing food do not wash their hands. Food aren't cooked properly. Human feces contaminate water supplies. Flies transfer pathogen on their bodies. What is produced during anaerobic respiration in muscles? Carbon dioxide? No. Carbon dioxide for aerobic respiration. Ethanol? No. Ethanol and aerobic respiration, but for yeast. And also carbon dioxide, also anaerobic respiration for yeast. Lactic acid, yes. Lactic acid, anaerobic respiration in muscles and Huber's bacteria. But water, no. Water for aerobic respiration. So the correct answer C, lactic acid. Which structure contains relay neurons? Gland, muscle, spinal cord, synapse. Okay, let's read this. Third type of neuron is the relay or connector neuron. These are short and pass on impulses from sensory neurons to motor neurons inside the brain and spinal cord. So the correct answer C, spinal cord. But what about synapse? Synapse, when any two neurons meet, they do not actually touch each other. There is a tiny gap between them called synapse. A man injures his arm in an accident. Afterwards, he can move. Yes, he can move his hand, but cannot feel objects touching his hand. What could cause this? Both sensory and motor neurons are cut. Effectors are damaged. No, he can move. Motor neurons are cut. No, he can move, but he cannot feel object. So sensory neurons are cut because sensory neurons transmit impulses from sense organs to the brain and spinal cord, and he cannot feel objects. So sensory neurons are cut. No motor neurons, and also no effector because he can move his hand. What are the effects of adrenaline on the human body? Adrenaline is secreted by the adrenal glands. If you realize that you are in a situation that puts you at risk of injury or even death, you will immediately become much more aware and ready to take action. The response is necessary to survive in these fight or flight situations are coordinated by adrenaline, which gets you ready for action by increasing your breathing rate. So the correct answer C or D. Increasing your heart pulse rate. So also the correct answer C or D. Widening your pupils so that more light enters your eyes. So the correct answer is D, size of pupils increased. Which is the correct definition of a drug? Again, a drug is any substance taken into the body that modifies or affects chemical reactions in the body. So the correct answer A, substance that affects or modifies chemical reactions in the body. A man injures his arm in an accident. Again here, but not the same question. Afterwards, he can feel objects touching his hand. So here, sensory neuron present. But he cannot move his hand away from them. Oh, motor neuron is cut. So what happened? What could cause this? Yes, the nerve connection is cut only between his central nervous system and the effectors in his arm. So he cannot move his hand away from them because the nerve connection is cut only between his central nervous system and the effectors, the muscles in his arm. So the correct answer is C. Focus here for this question. The diagram shows a flower cut in half. Which structure receives the pollen nucleus during fertilization? Yeah, receive the pollen the pollen nucleus during fertilization. Yes, D, ovules during fertilization, not during pollination. It will be stigma that catch pollen grains. But anther, where the pollen is made, filament hold the anther. So the correct answer is ovules. During childbirth, what must happen to the amniotic sac breaks? What happens to the cervix? Dilates, get wider, and uterus wall contracts. So the correct answer, B. Amniotic sac breaks, uterus wall contract, and cervix dilates. What is a barrier method? We said it before. Diaphragm and condom and femidom for female. Which is the correct description of mitosis? Yeah, produces genetically identical cells for growth and repair. We said it before also. Which term is used to describe alleles that are always expressed when they are present in the genotype? Yes, dominant. An allele is a version of a gene. Most genes have many alleles. The genotype is the genetic makeup of an organism. The phenotype is all the features of an organism other than its genotype. Dominant allele is always expressed in the phenotype. So the correct answer is dominant. What about recessive? Allele is expressed only when no dominant allele is present. Homozygous individual has two identical alleles of a gene. Heterozygous individual has two different alleles of a gene. The correct answer, A, dominant. Some human phenotypes are listed: body mass, foot size, height, sex. Which features are examples of continuous variation? Body mass, foot size, and height. We said it before. But 6, discontinuous variation, because it's limited and only by genes. Let's see again. Continuous variation influenced by genes and environment, resulting in a range of phenotypes like height in human, foot size, and body mass. But discontinuous variation results in a small number of phenotypes which no intermediates. Discontinuous variations is caused by genes alone, like human blood groups and sex, for male and female only, limited. Look here. The type of variation is called continuous variation. Why? Because there is a continuous range of heights from shortest to tallest, and there are many genes that contribute to your overall height. But environmental factors such as the quantity and quality of the food you eat and the amount of exercise you take also influence your height. A food chain is shown: potato plant, slug, hedgehog. By which process is the energy transferred from the slug to the hedgehog? Yes, ingestion is taking of substance, food and drink into the body through the mouth. The diagram shows a food web. Energy from sunlight, organism H, producer, organism J, herbivore, organism K, carnivore, organism L, decomposer. What is organism L? Yes, organism L, decomposer. The diagram shows part of the carbon cycle. What do arrows X and Y represent? X, respiration, plants do respiration and produce carbon dioxide like all living organisms. What about Y? Yes, Y is feeding. Plants feed by animals. So the correct answer for X and Y, respiration and feeding. So the correct answer D. What can be used to reduce competition between crop plants and weeds? What can be used to reduce competition between crop plants and weeds? Let's see this. Chemical fertilizers encourage the growth of crop plants, increasing the yield of the crop. Pesticides kill pests like insects that feed on crops. Herbicides kill weeds, yes, that compete with crop plants for water, light, and nutrients. So the correct answer, B, herbicides, reduce competition. Large areas of forest are cut down in order to clear the land for other uses. If the land isn't replanted with trees or crops, what effect does this have on the atmosphere? Yeah, carbon dioxide increase. Deforestation has resulted in a number of environmental problems like extinction of species and loss of soil, increase in flooding, increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The diagram shows 4 positions on a river where water samples were taken. Which graph show oxygen concentrations in the river? What happens here? Sewage is the biggest single pollutant. It encourages the growth of algae and bacteria, which use up lots of oxygen, killing fish and small invertebrates. If raw untreated sewage is dumped in a river, it encourages the growth of bacteria that feed on the organic matter. So the correct answer, C, oxygen concentration, W, direction of flow, W, increase here, and also X, the same. But here, untreated sewage outlet, the percentage of the oxygen concentration in the river in Y and Z decrease. Why decreases? Because sewage encourages the growth of algae and bacteria, which use up lots of oxygen. So the percentage decrease. Which graph shows the effect of pollution by sewage on the amount of oxygen dissolved in a river? That's the other question. Yes, dissolved oxygen, here sewage enters. In this part, the percentage of oxygen decrease and then increase. What happened here to increase again? As the water travels downstream, it gradually improves in quality as suspended waste settles out and is decomposed by bacteria. If no more sewage is dumped in the river, the community recovers as the oxygen concentration of the water increase again. So the correct answer here, A. The diagram shows some of the processes carried out by living organisms. What happens here? Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Here X for green plant. Yeah, photosynthesis or nutrition. But here chicken, respiration, produce carbon dioxide or excretion. And here also for Y, excretion for waste products. And here green plant, nutrition for chicken. And here Y, excretion by waste products. Which two characteristics here? Nutrition, yes, and excretion. So the correct answer B. Which is a feature of cells used to place organisms in the plant kingdom? Yes, chloroplast. And also cell wall, but no, here no cell wall. Chloroplast. So the correct answer B. Which cell is adapted for absorption? Yes, T. Root hair cells in a plant have long extensions that give them a large surface area to absorb water and ions from the soil. But what about A? Palisade mesophyll cells are plant cells with numerous chloroplasts in the cytoplasm, trap light energy for photosynthesis, not for absorption. What about B? Ciliated cell. We said it before. In the lungs, air passages in the lungs, trachea and bronchi, and the oviducts in the female reproductive system. These cells have cilia on the surface, cilia feedback, and to create a current in the fluid next to the cell surface. What about number? Letter C, sperm cells have a tail and adapted for swimming. The head of the sperm carries genetic information from the male parent to the female parent. Genes from the father are present in the sperm nucleus. So the correct answer D, root hair cells for absorption. The diagram shows part of leaf. What is the layer X? Spongy mesophyll. So easy. So the correct answer C. The diagram shows part of the alimentary canal and the associated organs, which labeled part stores bile. Yes, so the correct answer C. Bile also enters the duodenum along a tube called the bile duct. Bile is yellow green fluid made in the liver and is stored in the gallbladder. The correct answer C. Which human teeth are used for biting and cutting food? Let's see here. The differing shapes and size of teeth enable them to perform slightly different functions. Incisors, biting and cutting, canines for tearing, holding and biting, premolars and molars for chewing and grinding up food. So here biting and cutting, yes, incisors and canines. ET, a decrease in which factor normally cause the transpiration rate to increase? Humidity, light intensity, number of stomata, and temperature. Increased light intensity opens the stomata and increase transpiration rate. So here increase and increase, but the question decrease and increase, decrease factor and increase the rate. Okay, what about increasing temperature and wind speed? Increase the rate of transpiration, increase factor, increase factor. So it's not correct for light intensity and temperature and the number of stomata. So the correct answer A, humidity. Increase humidity, decrease the rate of transpiration, and vice versa. In very humid conditions, there may be nearly as much water vapor in the atmosphere as in the air inside the leaves. This means that there is no concentration gradient for water vapor, so the rate of transpiration is low. In dry conditions, the concentration gradient is very steep, so much more water vapor diffuses out through stomach. Focus here, please, for this point. This explanation of this part in details. Water travels up the xylem from the roots into the leaves of the plant to replace the water that has been lost due to transpiration. Transpiration defined as the loss of water vapor from plant leaves by evaporation of water at the surface of the mesophyll cells, followed by diffusion of water vapor through the stomata. The first factor, temperature. If temperature increases, the water molecules will have more kinetic energy, causing them to move faster, which means they will evaporate more easily. So the rate of transpiration increase. If humidity decrease, in a humid environment, air is almost saturated with water vapor. This means there is hardly any concentration gradient between the air spaces inside the leaf and the air outside the leaf. Therefore, the rate of evaporation is slow. So here, if humidity decrease, the transpiration rate increase. What about wind speed? The effect increase, move away water vapor surrounding the plant, so maintains a strong concentration gradient. Light intensity increase. The stronger the light intensity, the more water the guard cells will absorb by osmosis, and they become more curved, allowing the stomata to open more widely to ensure as much carbon dioxide as possible is diffusing in photosynthesis. The wider the stomata, the more water vapor can diffuse out. So again, the correct answer is humidity. If humidity decrease, the transpiration rate increase, but light intensity increase, transpiration rate increase. Temperature increase, the rate of transpiration increase. Okay, focus please here. Which graph show most clearly what will happen to the rate of transpiration as humidity increase? Yeah, humidity increase, rate of transpiration decrease. So the correct answer B, graph B. Okay, this is a structure of the heart for valves. Left atrium, bicuspid valve, mitral valves here. Left ventricle, the wall of left ventricle is much thicker than the wall of the right ventricle. Here septum, separate the left and right sides of the heart. Here right ventricle, tricuspid valve, here right atrium. In mammal, what ensures the blood flow one way around the circulatory system? We said it valves. The heart and valves ensure one-way flow of blood around the circulatory system. Between each atrium and ventricle, is a one-way valve. The valves prevent the blood flowing back into the right and left atrium when the right and left ventricle contract. There are one-way valves between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery and between the left ventricle and the aorta. These prevent blood flowing back into the ventricles when they relax and fill with blood from the atria. The ventricles have more muscular walls than the atria because they have to pump the blood much further than the atria, either to the lungs or to the tissues of the body. Which structure separates the right and left sides of the heart? Yes, the heart consists of two muscular pumps divided by a septum. So the correct answer D, septum. Lyme disease is a disease which can be transmitted to humans in the following way. A mouse carries the bacteria in its blood. The name of this bacteria, Borrelia burgdorferi, in its blood. Tick bites the mouse and the bacteria are transferred into the tick. The tick bites human and bacteria are transferred to the human. The human becomes infected with Lyme disease. What is the pathogen here in this process? Yes, Borrelia burgdorferi, it's a bacteria. Pathogen are organisms that cause disease. Most of the organisms that cause disease in humans are bacteria and virus. So here this bacteria is pathogen. But what about tick? The tick is the vector, and mouse the host. So the correct answer B, the pathogen bacteria, the name of the bacteria. What is produced by anaerobic respiration in yeast? In yeast, alcohol and carbon dioxide. So the correct answer B, alcohol and carbon dioxide only. But no water, no lactic acid. Lactic acid, mussels. And yogurt bacteria. Lactic acid only, mussels and yogurt bacteria. Sensory neurons conduct impulses from where? Sensory neurons transmit impulses from where? From sense organs to the brain and spinal cord. So the correct answer C. But what about motor neurons? Motor neurons transmit impulses away from the brain and spinal cord to effector organs like muscles and glands. This is letter A. Is correct for A, but not for sensory neuron. A third type of neurons is a relay connector neuron. These are short and pass on impulses from sensory neurons to motor neurons inside the brain and spinal cord. What is the function of the cornea? Again, refract right. We said it before. But what about this one? A, carries impulses to the brain. Oh, optic nerve. Here, this optic nerve contains light sensitive receptors. Yeah, retina. Controls how much light enters the eye, is iris. So the correct answer D, refracts light. Which response are shown by the root of a plant? Gravitotropism, phototropism. Okay. Gravitropism, whichever way a seed is planted, the root always grows downwards in the direction of gravity. They should always grow upwards against the direction of gravity. So a growth response to gravity is called gravitropism. Roots are positively gravitropic because they grow in the same direction as the stimulus, gravity. They grow downwards into the soil to absorb water and mineral ions. Shoots are negatively gravitropic. They will always grow in the opposite direction to the direction of gravity. This ensures that the shoots grow upwards, getting the leaves into sunlight. So the correct answer here, C. Because root, negative for phototropism, but positive for gravitropism. Which definition of all drugs? Again, a drug is any substance taken into the body that affects chemical reactions in the body. The diagram shows half a flower. Which row identifies the parts of the flower? P, Q, R, S. P, anther, the male part. Q, stigma, female part. R, style, female part. S, ovary, female part. Here stigma, style, and ovary is called carpel, the female part. Anther and filament, stamen, the male part. So the correct answer, A. The diagram shows the human male reproductive system. What are structures P, Q, and R? P, what is the name of P? P, sperm duct. The name of R, artes. The name of Q, urethra. So the correct answer A. B for sperm duct, Q for urethra, artes. Which method of birth control would also help to protect against HIV, human immunodeficiency virus? Yes, condom. Because here, HIV is a virus that infects cells in the immune system. It is transmitted in the semen or in the blood. With the time, HIV infection may lead to a collection of disease that is known as AIDS. The spread of HIV can be reduced by men using condoms during sexual intercourse, by reducing the use of shared needles between drug users, and by careful screening of donated blood used in transfusions. So the correct answer A. Which word describes nuclear division to produce genetically identical cells? Mitosis. Yes, mitosis produces daughter cells that are genetically identical and have the same number of chromosomes as the parent cell. But what about fertilization? Occurs when the nucleus of a sperm cell fuses with the nucleus of an egg cell. Inheritance is the transfer of genetic information from generation to generation. What about meiosis? The reduction, division, in which the chromosome number is halved from diploid to haploid, resulting in cells that are genetically different, not identical. Because meiosis produces variation by forming new combinations of maternal and paternal chromosomes. The diagram shows a family tree. Some individuals have inherited a genetic condition. Your grandparents parents, children. Which statement about the grandparents is correct? Let's see this. Each carries two recessive alleles for this condition. Here, grandparents, this affected female and this affected male. So here, this is heterozygous. So each carries only one recessive and one dominant. Let's see this. Other grandparent. Also here, two affected male. Also here, heterozygous. Each carries only one recessive allele for this condition. So the correct answer is B. Each carries only one recessive allele for this condition. Because here homozygous individual has two identical alleles for a gene, and the heterozygous individual has two different alleles of a gene, one recessive and one dominant. By another way, here, A capital is small, A capital is small, and here is small, because here A capital is small, and here A capital is small. Here one A capital, okay, and here A capital is small, and this one is small. The diagram shows a family tree. Some individuals have inherited a genetic condition. For grandparents, which statement about the grandparents is correct? Each carries two recessive alleles for this condition. Let's see. If each carries two recessive alleles, or what about normal female? And here normal female and normal male is dominant. Only the grandmothers are heterozygous. No, it is not correct. What about the affected female and the affected male? Only the grandfathers are heterozygous. It is not correct. What about the affected male and affected female? This is from recessive alleles. So each carries only one recessive allele for this condition. So the correct answer B. Homozygous individual has two identical alleles of a gene, and the heterozygous individual has two different alleles of a gene. So each carries only one recessive allele for this condition. So grandmother and grandfather heterozygous. Both heterozygous. What is the definition of variation? Variation is the difference between individuals of the same species. What about B? Individuals of the same species in one area is population. The way in which new alleles are formed is mutation. So the correct answer C, difference between individuals of the same species is variation. Having two identical alleles of particular genes is homozygous, not variation. Which pyramid of numbers has more tertiary consumers than producer? Yes, the correct answer A. This is because the size of organism is also important. One large organism, like the oak tree in the pyramid above, contains enough energy to support many smaller organisms, like insects. So you can see the pyramid like this, pyramid of numbers like this, because here has more tertiary consumers than producers. 36. The diagram represents part of the carbon cycle. What happens here? Carbon dioxide in air, this photosynthesis, carbon compounds in green plants, feeding, carbon compounds in animals, respiration, carbon dioxide in air, and here also respiration. So X, respiration. Y, also respiration. And Z, feeding. So the correct answer B. The diagram shows part of food web. What is most likely to decrease the size of the frog population? To decrease the size of the frog population, so the correct answer, fewer slugs and also fewer worms, because worms and slugs eaten by frogs. So the correct answer, B, fewer slugs and worms. So what about fewer bad girls? Bad girls decrease, frogs increase, because it's eaten, frogs eaten by bad girls. More plants, so more slugs, and more worms, so more frogs. More worms increase frogs. So here we want to decrease the size of the frog population, so fewer slugs and fewer worms. Genes can be inserted into crop plants to make them resistant to herbicides. Which process is this an example of antibiotic resistance? This is for bacteria. Genetic engineering, natural selection, selective breeding. Herbicide resistance in crop plant, genetically modified variety of oilseed rape has been developed in which a gene transferred into it from a soil bacterium. This gene makes oilseed rape resistant to the herbicide glufosinate if applied to fields of normal oilseed rape. This herbicide would kill the weeds and the crop itself. But the genetically modified oilseed rape is not affected by the herbicide, and so will continue to grow while the weeds are destroyed. Herbicide-resistant soya has also been developed. So here, the process, genetic engineering. But what about antibiotic resistance? The evolution by natural selection, mutation. Natural selection is the process by which plants and animals that can adapt to changes in their environment are able to survive and reproduce, while those that cannot adapt do not survive. So it's not correct. What about selective breeding or artificial selection? Is when humans breed plants and animals for particular genetic characteristics. But here what happens? Genes can be inserted into crop plants to make them resistant to herbicides by genetic engineering. Lichens are organisms that do not grow well in polluted air. Which graph shows the change in the number of lichen species from the center of a polluted city to the unpolluted countryside 15 kilometers away? The correct answer, C. What happens here? It's unpolluted countryside. The number of lichen species increase. Because lichens are organisms that do not grow well in polluted air. Lichens can be used as air also pollution indicators, especially of the concentration of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. So when we move away from this place, the polluted place, the number of lichen species increase. So the correct answer, C. 3 human activities are listed: burning fossil fuels, deforestation, replanting forests. Which activities can cause the change shown in the graph? The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increase. Also, the correct answer, burning fossil fuels leads to increased carbon dioxide, and deforestation also leads to increased carbon dioxide. But replanting forests, what happens? Decrease the percentage of carbon dioxide. So the correct answer, B, 1 and 2 only. What are features of the leaves of a plant that is dicotyledon? Broad leaves is for dicot, parallel veins for monocot. So the correct answer, B. Let's see this table for monocots and dicots. Monocots single cotyledon, long narrow leaf, veins are parallel. Vascular bundles scatter, flower parts in multiplies of 3. But dicots 2 cotyledons, broad leaf, network of veins branched, ring of vascular bundles, flower parts in multiplies of 5 or 4. The diagram show an image of chloroplast. The image is 5 centimeters long. The actual length of the chloroplast is 5 micrometers. What is the magnification of the image? Magnification, image size divided by actual size. But we want to convert 5 centimeter long to what? To micrometer. To multiply 5 by 10,000. So here 5 multiply 10,000 divided by 5 equals 10,000. So the correct answer, C. When bases pair up in the formation of DNA, what is one of the bearings? The DNA molecule consists of 2 strands coiled together to form double helix. Each strand contains chemical called bases A, C, G, and T, which bond together. A with T, C with G. So the correct answer, B, G with C. The graph shows how enzyme activity is affected by temperature. How can that change in activity between 40 degrees Celsius and 55 degrees Celsius be explained? What happens here? Yes, the substrate is less likely to fit into the active site because here is reached to zero. The rate of reaction is zero, is denatured. So what happened? The shape of the active site determines whether the substrate will fit into the enzyme for the reaction to occur. At first, increasing temperature of an enzyme-controlled reaction will increase the rate. This is because enzyme and substrate molecules have greater kinetic energy. They move around more quickly, and there are more chances of them colliding, the substrate fitting into the active site and reaction taking place. However, at high temperature, the bonds holding the enzyme molecule together start to break down. This changes the shape of the active site, so the substrate no longer fits. We say that the enzyme has been denatured and it can no longer catalyze the reaction. So the correct answer, D, the substrate is less likely to fit into the active site. The graph shows how the rate of photosynthesis of a plant changes with light intensity at three different carbon dioxide concentration. In each case, the temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. What happens? What is the limiting factor for the rate of photosynthesis at point X on the graph? Yes, the correct answer, carbon dioxide concentration, because it would change the carbon dioxide concentration, but temperature kept constant. What happens? At low light intensity is the limiting factor. But at high light intensity is no longer the limiting factor. Other factor would be the limiting factor. Here is carbon dioxide. The more light a plant receives, the faster the rate of photosynthesis. Here at point, some other factor becomes limiting. For the graph, carbon dioxide. This trend will continue until some other factor required for photosynthesis prevents the rate from increasing further because it is now in short supply. So graph levels off, the rate becomes constant. At lower light intensities, the increase in the rate is linear. Carbon dioxide here is one of the raw materials required for photosynthesis. This means is the more carbon dioxide that is present, the faster the reaction can occur. This trend will continue until some other factor requires photosynthesis prevents the rate from increasing further because it is now in short supply. Please focus here for this point. Where are valves found that prevent blood from flowing in the wrong direction? Yes, heart and veins. Heart contains valves and veins also contains valves. The sequence of amino acids in antibodies enables them to complete with which function? Yes, bind to a specific antigen. Antibodies lock onto antigens, leading to a destruction of pathogens. Each pathogen has its own antigens, which have specific shapes that fit the shape of specific antibodies. Focus here. Don't become confused between all the words that begin with anti in this unit. Antigen, chemical that stimulates lymphocytes to produce antibodies. Antibodies, proteins secreted by lymphocytes that help to destroy pathogens. Antitoxins are particular antibodies that make toxins harmless. Like enzyme, also antibodies are proteins with many different shapes. Enzymes have active site that combine with their substrates. Similarly, each type of antibody has a binding site that combines with one type of pathogen. This is a valve. The previous point. Where are valves? Let's see the valves. Tricuspid valve locating between the right atrium and right ventricle. Pulmonary valve located between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. Mitral valve located between the left atrium and left ventricle. Aortic valve located between the left ventricle and the aorta. Valves in the circulatory system maintain the direction of blood flow. Here to ensure the flow of blood in only one direction from tissue to heart. Valves are necessary, so all veins have valves. The table shows the composition of blood entering and leaving the liver and the kidneys, which row is correct. Highest concentration of urea in the blood. Yes, when entering kidneys. Lowest concentration of urea in the blood when entering liver, because urea is made in the liver. Made in the liver. So lowest concentration of urea in the blood that entering the liver. And after this, it is carried to the kidneys. So the highest concentration of urea in the blood entering the kidneys. A person has a high protein diet. What describes that level of urea in the blood leaving the liver and in the urine leaving the kidneys? Blood leaving the liver, high urea, but urine leaving kidneys also high urea. Both high, blood leaving liver and urine leaving kidneys. When hormones are secreted, they affect different parts of the body. The table shows some features that are affected by 4 different hormones. Which hormone is adrenaline? Okay, let's see adrenaline. Adrenaline increases breathing and pulse rate. So pulse rate is correct. And breathing rate correct. And stimulate widening of the pupils in fight or flight situations. So pupil size, yes, increase. So the correct answer, C. Does not affect menstrual cycle and sperm production. When the environment is hot, how do the arterioles in the skin and hair erector muscles react? Yes, arterioles dilate, widen. Vessels dilate to increase blood flow to skin. But what about hair erector muscles? Yes, hair erector muscles will relax. Here, heat loss by radiation. Getting hot. But what about cold? Vessels constrict, reducing the blood flow to the skin. So trapped air is an excellent insulator. Here react. The erector muscles will contract. The diagram shows one parent hydra growing and releasing an offspring from the side of its body. Which row is correct? Parent and offspring are genetically identical. Yes. And the sexual reproduction. Yes. So the correct answer A. This is budding. Budding is a form of asexual reproduction that results from outgrowth of a part of a cell or body region leading to a separation from the original organism into 2 individuals. Budding occurs commonly in some invertebrate animals such as corals and hydra bud forms that develop into an adult and breaks away from the main body. Which rule describes self-pollination? Self-pollination involves the transfer of pollen from anther to the stigma of the same flower. So the correct answer, B or C or D for the same flower. It's complete. Or a different flower, but on the same plant. So the correct answer is B, a different flower on the same plant or same flower. It's about self-pollination. But what about cross-pollination? Involves the transfer of pollen from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower on a different plant of the same species, which feature is only found in the male gamete. A chromosome, enzyme, jelly coat, and mitochondria. Jelly coat is for egg, not for sperm. Is female gamete, not male gamete. But a chromosome only found in the male gamete. A chromosome. But enzymes, male and female. Jelly coat, female only. Mitochondria, male and female. So the correct answer A, a chromosome, male only. The graph shows how the mass of DNA changes during mitotic cell division. Where on the graph are two cells formed? Where on the graph are two cells formed? Let's see what happens here in this graph for A and B and C and D. Let's explain it. This is G1, S, and G2 and M. What happens here? This model of a cell cycle, DNA replication and cell division, nuclear membrane left out. B, cellular DNA content during the different cell cycle phases. G2 plus M phase, cells possess double the DNA amount. Oh, so the correct answer for this part, G2 and M, because here G2 plus M phase, cells possess double the DNA amount as compared to non-dividing G1 phase cells. After mitosis and cell division, the cellular DNA content reaches G1 level again. So the correct answer, G2 and the M. So this part, the correct answer, this part for D. Yes. Where on the graph are two cells formed? D. Yes, this part. Look at this. A. What happened here? What happens here? Here 1, G1, and here S, and here G2, and here this M. What happens here? Double the DNA amount. So the correct answer, D, this part. What happens during meiosis? What happens during meiosis? Okay, let's compare between meiosis and mitosis. Mitosis, one division. Meiosis, two divisions. Mitosis, the number of chromosomes remain the same. The daughter cells are genetically identical. Two daughter cells are formed. But meiosis, the number of chromosomes is halved. The daughter cells are genetically different from the parent cells. Four daughter cells are formed, all haploid. So which one that is correct? Diploid cell divided to form haploid cells. The correct answer B. Red-green color blindness is a condition that occurs more frequently in men than in women. Which statement about this condition is correct? Yes, X-linked characteristic is one in which the gene responsible is located on a 6 chromosome, X chromosome. Males have only one X chromosome, so recessive alleles are more likely to be expressed in males than female, more frequently in men than in women. So here, sex-linked characteristic. It was more frequently in men than in women. But what about codominance? Codominance occurs when both alleles are expressed in the phenotype as neither is dominant over the other. The gene is on the Y chromosome? No, X, located on X chromosome. Which statement explains which the allele for sickle cell anemia is commonly found in human populations in certain parts of the world? Yeah, yes, it protects people against malaria. For sickle cell anemia, it's a genetic disease and is an example of natural selection. Mutation in the gene that codes for hemoglobin production causes a normal allele HB small, which codes for normal hemoglobin production, and mutant allele HBS. Parent with HBS is likely to die from sickle cell anemia. Parent with HBA is likely to die from malaria. But people who are heterozygous HBA for the sickle cell allele have a resistance to malaria. Okay. So it protects people against malaria. Let's explain in detail. Sickle cell anemia and malaria. Malaria is a serious and sometimes fatal disease caused by parasite that commonly infects a certain type of mosquito which feeds on human. Sickle cell anemia provides protection against malaria because the parasites cannot penetrate sickle cell red blood cells. Therefore, sickle cell genotype are favorable in countries where malaria is highly prevalent. So a person with sickle cell anemia will be fully protected against malaria, but likely to die from sickle cell disease. A person that has no sickle cell anemia has no protection from malaria and is therefore likely to contract the disease. A person that is a sickle cell carrier gains moderate malaria protection and will not die from sickle cell disease. Look here for sickle cell anemia and natural selection. In the United States, about 1 in 500 African Americans develop sickle cell anemia. In Africa, about 1 in 100 individuals develop the disease. Why the frequency of such a serious disease so much higher in Africa? The answer is to do with malaria. Malaria is a disease spread by mosquitoes that are endemic in many areas of Africa and causes over 1 million deaths per year. In the late 1940s, studies of disease in population suggested a connection between African populations, malaria, and sickle cell disease. Theory was suggested if the heterozygous individuals are protected from malaria and the negative effects of sickle cell are only present in a small proportion of people who are homozygous for the affected allele. Then the affected allele could become more common. Later studies supported this theory, showing that African children who are heterozygous for the sickle allele have a 10-fold reduction in the risk of getting malaria. This means that there is a strong correlation between the prevalence of sickle cell anemia in areas of the world where malaria is common. Why is the allele for sickle cell anemia common in some parts of the world? Because the sickle cell anemia allele protects against malaria. So important question. The development of antibiotic resistance in bacteria is an example of which process? Yes, evolution by natural selection. Let's revise this part. Artificial selection, the method used by humans to produce varieties of animals and plants which have an increased economic importance. So A is not correct. Natural selection is the process by which plants and animals that can adapt to change in their environment are able to survive and reproduce, while those that cannot adapt do not survive. It gives the greater chance of passing on of genes by the best adapted organisms. So the correct answer, evolution by natural selection. Yes, 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 yes. What about variation? Variation, difference between individuals within the same species can be caused by various factors. The most important one that you need to be aware of is sexual reproduction, the mixing of genes from the father and mother to produce offspring with completely unique genetic makeup causes variation. Mutation, random changes of the DNA of an organism. Genetic engineering is also called genetic modification or GM. It involves modifying the genome of an organism by introducing a gene from another organism to result in a desired characteristic. Genetic engineering involves these steps. Selection of the desired characteristic. The gene responsible for the characteristic is cut out of the chromosome. The gene is transferred and inserted into another organism. Replication of the modified organism. Plant crop have been genetically engineered to be disease resistant or to produce bigger fruits. The diagram contains information about the number and mass of organisms in a food web. What is the total biomass of the primary consumers? Primary consumers. So it's about squirrels and squirrels in this food web. Let's see. Yes, here, sure. Yeah, 3,500 multiply 20 equals 70,000. And squirrels, 150 multiply 400 equals 60,000 plus 70,000 equals 130,000 divided by 1,000 equals 130 kilogram. Because here in gram, we converted it to kilogram. The diagram shows some of the stages in nitrogen cycle. Okay. Which arrow represent the process of nitrogen fixation? Yes, here, nitrogen fixation. But here, denitrification, here absorption, nitrification, nitration, death and decay, here nitrogen fixation by bacteria. Oh, again, this part. Which term is used to describe the phase of fastest growth in population of bacteria? Stationary, lag, exponential, or log birth rate greater than death rate. Sigmoid. Okay, the correct answer here, C. The fastest growth, then death rate. Let's explain. The lag phase, what happens here? Lag phase, when doubling of the numbers has little effect, as the numbers are so small, bacteria take up water and nutrients and make new cytoplasm, DNA, and the enzymes. Yes, the next phase, exponential or log phase, when the population is increasing, yes, rapidly. The population increases by doubling, and there are no limiting factors such as food or water during this phase. Rapid growth. There are no factors to limit population growth. But after a while, limiting factors such as lack of food and build-up of waste restrict population growth, which slow down and stop. So the correct answer, exponential or lag phase. What about the stationary and sigmoid? Stationary phase, when bacteria cells are dying at the same rate at which they are being produced. So it's equal. Rate, growth rate, and death rate are equal. The death phase, when more cells are dying than are being produced. So death rate here, greater than growth rate. And the graph, the curve shown in the graph is known as sigmoid growth curve. Which are reasons why bacteria are often useful in biotechnology? Because bacteria lack of ethical concerns over their manipulation and growth. Number two, they have the same genetic codes as all other organisms. Again, which are reasons why bacteria prokaryote, so their DNA is located in nucleus, no nucleus. So number three is not correct. So the correct answer 1 and 2. Lack of ethical concerns over their manipulation and growth. And they have the same genetic code as all other organisms. Let's explain the biotechnology. Biotechnology is the application of biological organisms, systems, or processes to manufacturing and service industries. Genetic engineering involves the transfer of genes from one organism to an unrelated species. Both processes often make use of bacteria because of their ability to make complex molecules. For example, proteins and their rapid reproduction rate. Bacteria are useful in biotechnology and genetic engineering because they can be grown and manipulated without raising ethical concerns. They have genetic code that is the same as all other organisms. So genes from other animals or plants can be successfully transferred into bacterial DNA. Bacterial DNA is in the form of circular strand and also small circular bases called plasmids. Scientists have developed techniques to cut open these plasmids and insert sections of DNA from other organisms into them. When the bacterium divides, the DNA in the modified plasmid is copied, including the foreign DNA. This may contain a gene to make a particular protein such as insulin, which can be extracted and used as a medicine to treat diabetes, for example. Penicillin is produced in a fermenter by growing a fungus Penicillium. The graph shown how the mass of living bacterium, fungus, and concentration of penicillin changed over time. When is the best time to collect the penicillin? Yes, at 5 days. The concentration of penicillin here. Yeah, so look, take your mass of living bacterium, fungus. The mass here decrease, but the concentration of penicillium increase. So the best time at 5 days. The number of Atlantic bluefin tuna fish found in the Atlantic Ocean has significantly decreased in the last 50 years. Which method would make the biggest improvement in the conservation of tuna fish stocks? Yes, introducing fishing. Which method would make the biggest improvement in the conservation of tuna fish stocks? Yes, introducing fishing quotas. Quotas like portion or maximum quantity or limited quantity. Legal quotas in Europe, the common fisheries policy is used to set quotas for fishing, to manage fishing stocks and help protect species that were becoming endangered through overfishing. Quotas were set for each species of fish taken commercially and also for the size of fish. This was to allow fish to reach breeding age and maintain or increase their population. Look here for all. Quotas are issued by fishing authorities so that boats cannot take too many fish in each season. Some types of fishing are regulated to limit the decrease in fish stocks. A seine net is a very long net that completely surrounds a certain area and is operated from boats or from the shore. All the fish caught within the net are held in. The use of these nets has been limited or banned in many areas of the sea. Fishing nets have to be a certain minimum size so that small fish can escape and survive to breed. So A is not correct. Increasing the size of holes in fishing nets. The diagram shows 4 components of blood. Which components produce antibodies? A, phagocyte. B, lymphocyte. C, red blood cell. D, platelets for blood clotting. And red blood cells for oxygen. Lymphocyte, yes, produce antibodies. Phagocytes ingest pathogens and digest them using enzymes. But lymphocytes make antibodies that protect against pathogens in the body. Patient was injected with antibodies after being bitten by poisonous snake. The patient recovered and survived. What describes the effect in the patient's body? What happened? Yes, passive immunity. The correct answer D. Passive immunity is a short-term defense against pathogens using antibodies from another individual, because here patient was injected with antibodies after being bitten by poisonous snake. So the patient recovered and survived. So the here passive immunity. No memory cells are produced in passive immunity. Look, if protection is required in a hurry, then antibodies may be given by injection. This provides only temporary immunity, but should be sufficient to give protection. Immunity gained in this way is called passive immunity. What about active immunity? We said no memory cells are produced passive immunity. But what about active immunity? Active immunity is a defense against pathogen by antibody production in the body. Memory cells remain in the blood and the lymph after an immune response to provide a much faster and greater response to subsequent infections. Active immunity is gained after an infection by a pathogen. How do the concentration of glucose and urea in urine compare to their concentrations in blood plasma? Okay, glucose concentration in urine compared to blood plasma. Urea concentration in urine compared in blood plasma. Okay. Waste chemicals like urea diffuse from cells into the blood and are transported to the kidneys. Blood enters the kidneys through the renal arteries. Inside each kidney, there is a complex network of filtering units called kidney tubule. As the blood flows through these filtering units, small molecules such as glucose, ions, water, and urea are forced out of the blood plasma. So glucose concentration in urine compared to blood plasma is lower. To form a fluid known as filtrate. As the filtrate passes along tubule, the useful substances like glucose and ions are reabsorbed again into the blood. So urea concentration in urine compared to blood plasma is higher because here glucose reabsorbed into the blood again. So glucose concentration in urine is lower than the glucose concentration in the blood plasma, because here what happened? Reabsorption of glucose into the blood. How does the skin react when the body becomes cold? Arterioles constrict or becomes narrower, and sweat production decrease. In cold weather, little heat lost by radiation, and arterioles constrict, and here sweating stop. So sweat production decrease. So the correct answer A. Which characteristic of viruses prevents them from being affected by antibiotics? Antibiotics cannot kill virus. Since viruses have no cell wall, but rather live inside host cells, taking over their metabolic process. So here, which characteristic of viruses prevents them from being affected by antibiotics? Yes, they have no cell structure. So the correct answer, C. But let's see why antibiotics do not affect virus. Antibiotics have no effect on virus, so there is no point in taking antibiotics to treat viral disease. Viruses are not cells, and they do not carry out their own metabolism, but rely entirely on the cells of their host. We cannot use antibiotics to prevent processes that occur in our own cells. So the drugs used to control virus work in different ways. An example is the antiviral drug AZT, which is used to treat HIV/AIDS. AZT is very similar in structure to one of the bases in DNA and prevents the duplication of viral DNA, so stopping the virus producing copies of itself. 27. Some flowers can only be pollinated by specific insect species. What will happen if none of these insects are present? No seed produced because no pollination, no fertilization, so no seed production. So the correct answer is C. Which hormone is used in contraceptive pills? Contraceptive pills contains chemicals which have the same effect on the body as the hormone estrogen and progesterone. When mixed in suitable proportions, these hormones suppress ovulation and so prevent conception. The pills need to be taken each day for the 21 days between menstrual periods. So here prevent ovulation. Contraceptive pills mixture of progesterone and estrogen. So the correct answer D, progesterone. Which hormone causes the lining of the uterus to become thick and glandular before ovulation? Adrenal, FSH, estrogen, and progesterone. Pituitary hormone FSH stimulates the development of the follicle inside the ovary and the secretion of estrogen. So it's not correct. Estrogen stimulates the thickening of the uterus lining. Yes. And inhibits FSH production and causes the pituitary to release LH. LH stimulates ovulation and the formation. As here before ovulation, so the correct answer is estrogen, no FSH, no progesterone, because yellow body secretes progesterone. Which maintains the lining of the uterus after ovulation. In details, estrogen from ovaries thickens the lining of the uterus in preparation to implantation of embryo, stimulate the release of LH, inhibits secretion of FSH, so only one egg is produced. Progesterone, also from ovaries, maintain the thickness of lining of the uterus, stop menstrual cycle in pregnancy, prevent release of FSH and inhibits LH. Prevents follicle development, prevent uterus wall muscles contractions. FSH from pituitary gland and also LH. FSH stimulates the follicle to mature the egg and stimulates estrogen production. LH release the mature egg from the ovary. Focus with hormone for ovulation and after ovulation. The diagram shows the human nuclei and number of chromosomes in each nucleus, which diagram represents nuclear division of skin cells for growth and repair. Yes, the correct answer B, 46, mitosis, 46 and 46, because he said here, nuclear division of skin cells for growth and repair. So here, mitosis. And here, meiosis is not correct. Here, fusion. And here, mitosis also. But is not 46. Here, mitosis, but is not correct. Because here, N. But skin cells, this somatic cells, skin cells, to N. Meiosis is sometimes called reduction division. Yes. What is reduced during meiosis? Yes, chromosomes are reduced in number. Meiosis is a reduction division in which the chromosome number is halved from diploid to haploid, resulting in cells that are genetically different. So chromosomes are reduced in number. (32) In guinea pigs, the allele for black fur is dominant, and the allele for white fur is recessive. A test cross can be used to determine the genotype of a black guinea pig. What would be the expected result of the test cross if the black guinea pig was heterozygous? Yeah, heterozygous means B capital, B small. What is meant by test cross? Test cross is used to determine the genotype of an individual to find out whether it is homozygous or heterozygous. So here, one square between B capital B small, the black, but heterozygous, and B small, the white fur, the recessive. Look here, B capital, B small, B capital, B small, B small, B small, B small, B small, 50% black, 50% white. What is not affected by the environment? Height, skin color, blood group, or weight. Height, skin color, and weight is called what? Continuous or discontinuous? Yes, continuous variation is influenced by genes and environment. So it's not height is not correct, skin color is not correct, and weight is not correct. But C, blood group is correct answer. Why? Because here C, blood group, discontinuous variation is caused by genes only. And the question here, what is not affected by the environment? Desert plants have evolved to survive in places where very little water is available. Which process is reduced to enable them to retain as much water as possible? Which process is reduced to retain, to save as much water as possible? Yes, transpiration. Let's see the desert adaptations. All plants have to balance water uptake with water loss. It is important that they maintain the turgor in these cells or they will wilt. Very high rates of transpiration can kill a plant if it cannot absorb enough water to prevent long-term wilting. So here their stomata are closed during the day to reduce water loss and reduce transpiration. The diagram shows a pyramid of numbers. What is the correct description of the trophic level? Yes, 1 producers, 2 primary consumers, 3 secondary consumers. No problem. Bacteria are active in the nitrogen cycle. Which process in the nitrogen cycle is carried by nitrifying bacteria? The conversion of nitrogen gas to ammonia by nitrogen fixing bacteria. The conversion of nitrogen gas to nitrate also by nitrogen fixing bacteria. The conversion of nitrates to nitrogen, this is by denitrifying bacteria. So the correct answer C, the conversion of ammonia to nitrates. This is carried out by nitrifying bacteria. Focus here. The diagram shows population growth curve. Again, how long does the population remain in the stationary phase? Now, 80 minus 80 minus 57. 80 minus 57. Yes, please calculate it. 80 minus, yes, 80 minus 50, 80 here, minus 57, 57 equals 23 days. The stages describe how genetic engineering can be used to produce human insulin from bacteria. Number 1, cut bacterial plasmid DNA with restriction enzymes. Extract gene for insulin from human DNA with restriction enzymes. Insert recombinant plasmid into bacteria. Join human DNA to bacterial plasmid DNA using DNA ligase. Replicate bacteria containing recombinant plasmid. Which sequence will lead to the production of human insulin by bacteria? Let's see here what happens. The human pancreas cell and DNA human insulin producing gene and plasmid DNA cut with restriction enzymes. So here we can start with extract gene for insulin from human DNA with restriction enzymes, or we can start also cut bacteria plasmid DNA with restriction enzymes. So here no one, we start from 2. Okay, so the correct answer, extract gene for insulin from human DNA with restriction enzymes, then cut bacterial plasmid DNA with restriction enzymes. Then join human DNA to bacterial plasmid DNA using DNA ligase, and then insert recombinant bacterium, recombinant plasmid into bacteria, and then finally replicate bacteria containing recombinant plasmid. Look here, this diagram. What is an example of such sustainable use of resource? Sustainable resource is one that can be removed from the environment without it running out. So B is not correct. Cutting down forest and not replanting trees is not correct. Replanting deforested areas with one species of crop plant, no. It causes extinction of species, but here without it running out. Examples are forests and fish stocks. Forests can be conserved using education, protected areas, and cutters and replanting. So B and D is not correct. And also A, allowing only young fish to be caught. It's not correct. So here, look here. Fish stocks can be conserved using education, closed seasons, and protected area, controlled net types and mesh size, cutters, and monitoring of populations of fish. So the correct answer C, controlling the number of fish caught with cutters. The hormones from the female contraceptive pill can pollute water courses. What effect do they have? Decrease the amount of oxygen for fish, decrease the sperm count of men, increase the growth of producers, increase the number of decomposers. What happens? Population by pollution by contraceptive hormones when women use the contraceptive pill. The hormones in it are excreted in urine and become present in sewage. The process of sewage treatment doesn't extract the hormones, so they end up in water systems such as rivers and lakes and the sea. Their presence in this water affects aquatic organisms as they enter food chains. For example, male frogs and fish can become feminized. They can start producing eggs in their tests instead of sperm. This causes an imbalance between numbers of male and females animals. More females than males. Drinking water extracted from rivers where water from treated sewage has been recycled can also contain the hormones. This has all been shown to reduce the sperm count. So here, decrease the sperm count of men in men, causing a reduction in fertility. It should be noted that the contraceptive pill is not the only source of female hormones in water system. Also, natural hormones are also present in urine from cattle, for example, and these can enter the water with the runoff from farms. Which row correctly identified the blood vessels? Which row correctly identified the blood vessels? Largest internal space lumen. This is for vein. So the correct answer is C or D. Let's see. Thickest muscular wall. This for artery. So the correct answer D. Pulmonary vein, largest internal space lumen, and thickest muscular wall, pulmonary artery, transported blood towards the heart, pulmonary vein. A baby acquires protection from pathogens from the mother's breast milk. What is this protection called? Active immunity, immunization, vaccination, passive immunity. Yes, passive immunity. Obtain antibodies from mother. Antibodies pass across the placenta during pregnancy and are present in breast milk. This gives baby protection against disease that are in the environment and which the mother has immunity against. This is only temporary. As the baby's body treats the mother's antibodies as foreign and destroys them. The immunity is gained without exposure to antigens, so it's much safer than active immunity. Amongst other disease, babies are usually immune to tetanus and measles, both of which can cause death of children. The protection gained from passive immunity lasts until the time when they should receive their first vaccination against these diseases. So the correct answer, D, passive immunity. What about vaccination? That artificial way of gaining active immunity. Immunization also equals vaccination. Active immunity gained after infection by pathogen. What happens as a result? Deamination. Deamination is the breakdown of excess amino acids in the liver to form ammonia, which is made into urea. So the correct answer, D, urea is produced by glycogen. Glycogen is stored in liver and muscles. Starch is produced storing plants. Amino acids are converted to proteins. This is called anabolism. But the deamination in liver and urea is produced. The diagram shows some blood vessels near the surface of skin. If vasodilation occurs at X, what happens to the blood flow at Y and Z? Okay, let's explain in detail. A very effective way to regulate body temperature is to change how much blood flow through the capillaries near to the surface of the skin. Arterioles supply these capillaries with blood. The muscle around the arterioles can contract and relax to change the blood flow. To cool down these muscles in the walls of the arterioles relax, the vessels widen, and there is an increase in blood flow through the capillaries. This is known as vasodilation. More energy is now transferred to the surroundings by convection and radiation. So here vasodilation, increased blood flow, and dilation of the blood vessels, the widening of blood vessels. But what about vasoconstriction in the cold? The muscles in the walls of the arterioles contract, so the vessels become narrower. This reduces the blood flow through the capillaries, and the blood is diverted to stay beneath the fat layer in the skin. This is known vasoconstriction. Which substance can be misused to improve athletic performance? Alcohol, anabolic steroids, testosterone. 2 and 3, anabolic steroids and testosterone is misused to improve athletic performance. Because testosterone is made in the tests of males and is responsible for promoting the male primary and secondary sexual characteristics. Taking testosterone supplements known as doping leads to increased muscle and bone mass. The practice therefore has the potential to enhance sports person's performance. Anabolic steroids also are synthetic derivatives of testosterone. Also, they affect protein metabolism, increasing muscle development and reducing body fat. Athletic performance is thus enhanced. There are serious long-term effects of taking anabolic steroids. The main effects are sterility and masculinization in women and liver and kidney malfunction, because these drugs enhance performance beyond what could be achieved by normal training. They are deemed unfair and banned by most sports organizations. Okay. The diagram shows some blood vessels near surface of skin. The vasoconstriction occurs at X. What happens to the blood flow at Y and Z? Decrease. To the correct answer A. Here, the diagram of vasoconstriction. The blood flow more through deeper blood vessel and no sweating. But vasodilation for hot day, more blood flow through blood vessels near the surface, so more heat lost to surroundings. Here blood flow. Here in cold, vasoconstriction, blood flow, hypothesis surface of skin, blood returning to heart, hasn't lost much heat. Here decrease, but here increase. Blood flow close to its surface and heat is lost. Focus here for this question for vasoconstriction and vasodilation. So here increase blood flow and here decrease blood flow. Scientists investigated the amount of genetic variation found within different crop plants. They grow large numbers of each crop and measured the genetic variation within the species of crop. The results are shown in the table. Which crop or crops have been produced by sexual reproduction? Sexual reproduction, each zygote receives have its genes from its male parent and half from its female parent. So this means that sexual reproduction brings about variation in the offspring. So here the pea and carrot only, because here banana, no, 0% for genetic variation. Which organ secretes progesterone? Yeah, progesterone from ovaries. Pancreas, insulin and glucagon, salivary gland, saliva, testosterone. Which statement explain why the hormone FSH is used in fertility treatment? Because it stimulates the production of large numbers of eggs for use in vitro fertilization, IVF. Which substance is coded for by length of DNA? A gene is a length of DNA that codes for a protein. So here protein is lipase. So the correct answer D. Fertility treatments. Some women have difficulty becoming pregnant because they don't produce enough FSH to allow their eggs to mature. Fertility drugs contain FSH and LH, which stimulate eggs to mature in the ovary. Fertility treatments increase women's chance of becoming pregnant, although the treatment may not always work. On the other hand, because the treatment boosts the production of mature eggs, it increases the chance of twins or triplets. Multiply pregnancies carry a risk of complications and may lead to premature or underweight babies. In vitro fertilization, IVF treatment, an egg fertilized with sperm during IVF, vitro fertilization treatment. If a couple are having difficulty conceiving a child because there are issues with the quality of the man's sperm or woman has blocked oviducts, then IVF can be used. IVF involves giving a mother FSH and LH to stimulate the maturation of several eggs. The eggs are collected from the mother and fertilized by sperm from the father in a dish in the laboratory. The fertilized eggs develop into embryos. At the stage when there are tiny balls of cells, one or two embryos are inserted into the mother's uterus womb. The development of microscopy techniques have allowed IVF treatments to be developed further. Some features of cell division are listed. Chromosome number is maintained. Haploid cells are produced. New cells are genetically different, results in variation. Which features are involved in meiosis? Chromosome number is maintained? No, is not correct. Haploid cells are produced? Yes, for meiosis. Genetically different meiosis and variation for meiosis, so 2, 3, and 4 only. So C is correct. Meiosis reduction division, in which the chromosome number is halved from diploid to haploid, resulting in cells are genetically different, and meiosis produce variation by forming new combination of maternal and paternal chromosomes for sexual reproduction. Which statement about inheritance of red-green color blindness is correct? The gene for red-green color blindness is located on the X chromosome. So A is correct. Female are more likely? No, male more likely to have red-green color blindness than males. The allele for red-green color blindness is dominant allele? No, recessive. The gene for red color blindness is located on Y? No, on X.
A couple are both heterozygotes for a sickle cell allele. What is the probability that their first child will have sickle cell anemia? Look here, for heterozygous for sickle cell, S capital S small, S capital S small, S capital S small, S capital S small, S capital normal, S capital S small carrier, S capital S small carrier, S small sickle cell sufferer. So 25%. How does artificial selection differ from natural selection? Artificial selection changes the characteristics of living things? No, it's natural selection. Artificial selection is based on genetic variation? No, it's natural selection. Artificial selection doesn't involve competition for resources? Yes, it's correct for artificial selection. Artificial selection occurs over many generations? No, it's natural selection. Natural selection is the greater chance of passing of genes by the best adapted organism and is outlined as variation within population. So B for natural selection, production of many offspring. So D for natural selection, competition for resource. It is not for C. Here doesn't involve competition, but natural selection, competition for resources, struggle for survival, and reproduction by individuals that are better adapted to the environment than others and passing on their alleles to the next generation. Is number D, letter D for natural selection. What about artificial selection? Artificial selection is the choice by a farmer or grower of only the best parents to breed generation after generation and is outlined as selection by humans of individuals with desirable features and crossing these individuals to produce the next generation and selection of offspring, so showing the desirable features. The diagram shows part of the nitrogen cycle. Which letter represent denitrification? Yeah, D. Correct answer is D. A few yeast cells were placed in container of nutrient solution. The graph shows how their population size change over time. Which row show when the reproduction rate was greater than the death rate? We said it before. For the numbered phases of on the graph. Here, that's a exponential or log. So here, number, the production rate greater than death rate, number 1 and 2. Number 1 and 2. Number 1 and 2, reproduction rate or growth rate more than death rate. Here it is equal, and here death rate more than growth rate. So the correct answer B, 1 and 2. The diagram shows fermenter used to produce penicillin. What is the function of part X? Where is part X? Yeah, part X paddle. Maintain an even temperature inside the fermenter, the stirrer. What about monitor temperature inside the fermenter? These probes. Sterilize the contents of the fermenter, steam. Here, fermentation vessel. Here, probes for monitoring pH, oxygen, and temperature, and steam for sterilization. And this large stirrer to mix content and keeps the microorganisms suspended so they always have access to nutrients, and oxygen stirring also helps to maintain an even temperature throughout the fermenter. So The correct answer, stirrer. X is stirrer, to maintain an even temperature inside the fermenter. Bacteria are used to make insulin. This happens in several stages. Bacteria senses insulin in fermenters. Insulin gene is inserted into bacterial plasmid. Removal of insulin gene from human chromosome. Section of plasmid is removed. We can start with 3 or 4, but here not 3. Let's start with 4 and then 3. So the correct answer D. Section of plasmid is removed. Removal of insulin gene from a human chromosome. The insulin gene is inserted into a bacterial plasmid. Bacterial senses insulin in fermenter. The table shows some of the processes that occur during eutrophication, which rows show the correct increase or decrease of each process. Nitrate ion availability in the water, light availability in the water, rate of respiration by decomposers, oxygen availability in the water. Let's explain eutrophication. Major problem with the use of fertilizer occurs when they are washed off the land by rainwater into rivers and lakes. This leaching causes an increase in the levels of minerals such as nitrate. Increase in the level of nitrate ion availability in the water. So A or B. What about light and respiration and oxygen? And phosphate in the water, a process called eutrophication. Eutrophication encourages the growth of algae. This form a green bloom over the water surface, preventing sunlight reaching other water plants. So what happened to the light? Okay, light availability decrease. Okay, what about respiration and oxygen? These plants die because they are unable to carry out photosynthesis because no light, decrease the percentage of light. Bacteria decompose the dead plants, respiring and using up the oxygen. So the percentage also of oxygen decrease and the respiration increase. So the correct answer B. Nitrate ion availability in water increase, light availability in the water decrease, rate of respiration increase, the oxygen availability decrease. The graph show the effect of fishing on fish stocks over 20 years. In year 11, a fishing quota was introduced, followed by a total ban on fishing in year 16. What effects did these conservation measures have on the fish population? The fish population, fish stocks, fish population started increase after total ban on fishing was introduced. The fish population started increasing only after total ban on fishing was introduced in this part. The fish population became extinct? No, increase. The fish population started increasing immediately after fishing quota was introduced? No. In year 11, a fishing quota was introduced? No, it's still the same or be constant. There was no effect on the fish population? No, here it increased. So the fish population started increasing only after a total ban on fishing was introduced. Thanks, my dear. Goodbye.